Welcome to the Reasons to Reason podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sal Galati. This is the show that's going to talk about all the things we're not supposed to: God, religion, and politics. So strap in, prepare to get offended, and maybe, just maybe, our nation can learn how to reason again. I have a very exciting guest today for me. It's a guy I really just got to know here in the last few weeks. Funny enough, he's a neighbor. I bumped into him at our church and found out, small world, he's across the street, and I've been encouraged to hear his testimony. We thought it'd be cool to kind of talk to him because he's been a seeker for a long time, just trying to make sense of this world, pursued a lot of different routes, and finally came to rest in the truth of Jesus and what he has to offer. So I thought it'd be really cool to kind of talk and watch as a person progresses and seeks different answers that the world offers. You know, we had our guest Ilya on last week, and he's resting in stoicism, and I was trying to encourage him to challenge that worldview. You know, there's some good elements of it, but it ultimately leaves you empty, and it provides no real answers to the questions that we ask. So without further ado, here's my friend Luke.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. You know, we've been neighbors for a long time, but, you know, we never really got to know each other. But, you know, in God's time, we're here together. I'm excited to do this.
I actually could give you a reason why we didn't meet, and it's actually a little bit of a testimony of how God works in our lives. So I moved in here in 2015, and when I moved in, my wife wasn't with me because she had just filed for divorce. It was kind of it was a pivotal moment in my life. And this is not what the episode's about, but I'll tell you that I know for a fact that the Lord restored our marriage. He fixed both of us, not perfectly on this side of it, but, you know, there's many divorced couples out there. The connecting thread I see is that both people are trying to impose their will on the other. Well, if she was more like this, if he was more like that, and what the gospel offers is that the problem is not between the two, it's between you and the one who made you, and you get that right, and the other relationships come together. So why we didn't meet was because your mother was really sweet. She actually invited us to a thing, and I was so embarrassed that I was in this house all by myself. I kind of was a recluse. I didn't really associate, and I made up stories as why my family wasn't here. And then, you know, as you come out of it, you have this opportunity to make some neighbor friends, and then you miss it because of that. But look how he restored it now. So the point of this episode is to hear more about you, though. So to the extent that you want to share, talk about your life prior, talk about the things that you pursued or what you were able to get from those worldviews, and then ultimately where you're at today.
Grew up, went to a Catholic school. You know, first, I don't think Christ was really taught as much in Catholic school, or at least I did not retain if they did teach about it. And then my view on God was they almost made it seem like it was mythical. There just was no teaching of the relationship with Christ, and I was falling asleep in class. Going to Mass at school was just to go to get through it. I really was not taking anything away from it, and I was really conforming to the world at that point. I was of this world. In 8th grade, we started testing alcohol, smoking, and we were just obsessed with chasing girls. And that really took over my life. It was really all I cared about. I always wanted to be the funniest kid. I always wanted to be the most popular kid in my group. And living like that was very destructive. At first, it was harmless. You know, it was fun and games. At least I thought it was fun. But as I went on to college, I started using alcohol to deal with my mental issues, being self-conscious, having anxiety. Alcohol actually was my identity, you know, because I always wanted to be that funniest kid in the room. I joined a fraternity for a couple of years, and I had this character that, you know, I was the guy that, you know, jumps off the roof into the pool. And from there on, that's what everyone expected of me, and I wanted to please the world.
I actually have very similar kind of background. Maybe that's why me and you get along so well, as far as like being the guy that's always making everyone laugh. Abuse of alcohol as a youth, just to be fun, right? I wasn't trying. I guess you are trying to hide from something, or you're trying to be someone you're not. A couple notes I wrote down, like as far as your experience going to Catholic school, and it's something like I've come to terms with too, like the difference between religion and truth. That's why a lot of the episodes I kind of harp on that because it was so impactful to me. I remember when I was coming around to faith, I was going to a Bible study. It was after my wife filed for divorce, and I was going really to just hear some like good wisdom, but not like these stories are true. I treated it like mythology. And I remember to the point where I was realizing all the guys around the table, which were all successful guys, accomplished guys, intelligent guys, they actually believed this stuff was true. And that was like a radical shift. And like, wait a minute, I got to approach this kind of differently, conforming to the world. So the scriptures say that the God of this world, with a small g, has veiled the eyes of the unbeliever. And so this is maybe radical to people that haven't picked up the Bible. There are many gods. They're not real gods, but Satan is the god of this world. And what does that mean? He's behind the culture. He's behind the power structure. You know, the evidence of him is when you see like a subtle lie, a little twisting of the truth. And I think those lies are kind of everywhere. What your identity is, for example. A lot of identity talk these days. And the only place where you find true peace is your identity in him, and not worried about what other people think about you or how they value you or trying to derive your worth from other people. Your worth is derived because of the one who made you. That is a freeing thing, because now you're not dancing around to all these other people's view of you, and you have a sense of security. I would imagine you would say that Sal's a pretty confident guy, right?
Yeah, definitely. First time I met you, I mean, you were all confidence.
All right. Would it be shocking to you that prior to coming to this relationship with him, I had many, many sleepless nights concerned with what people thought about me? Would that shock you?
It would shock me, yeah.
Well, that's my testimony, all right? And that's what he does. So I shared with you earlier when we were kind of talking. One of the lines that was really impactful for me is when Jesus says, I leave you peace, and not like the world offers you, but a lasting peace. Mm-hmm. And we talked about like all these other things. People don't want to recognize it, but the world worships things. Yep. If it's not God, it's something. It could be alcohol, it could be good things, could be your family, could be your kids, but they don't make good gods, right? They let you down. And so what Jesus offers is a lasting peace. Right. When you have that truth, it's real. It's not a temporal peace that flies away as soon as you sober up. And what I found is, too, the strain on our relationships, they're all as a result of trying to get from another person what we could only get from him. Mm-hmm. Whether it's love, value, respect, all those things. I'll let you comment on that to the extent you want to.
So I had to really struggle with addiction to come to where I am now. I was a slave to these things, and I was not able to live without them. They were on my mind. So actually, after alcohol wasn't enough for me, and I actually developed a prescription and an amphetamine addiction. I was prescribed these pills, and I couldn't live without them, is what I thought. And then I ended up having a more harder drug addiction. These things took over my life, and I really had to hit a low spot. Because, like you were saying, Sal, like these things, they give you this temporary satisfaction, and then it just wants more from you to get into that same place. You need more of it next time, where Jesus gives you this peace, this everlasting peace. And it's just so amazing to seek God. And I spend my time now. I was never a reader. I could not read at all. I was telling you, I grew up dyslexic. But now I just find so much joy in reading the Word. And that's where I really find my peace right now. And the chains of addiction are broken. I never thought I could be here at this point.
Was there a tangible moment you came to a low spot where you said, I don't want to live like this anymore? What was that like, and when did you feel someone step in?
Through my addiction, I was being convicted. I'd stay up restless throughout the night, and I would be, I call it doom scrolling, when you're on the internet and you can't stop scrolling. And my feed started being all this Christian content out of nowhere. I remember there was a Billy Graham sermon. It was, Who is Jesus? And it was just like a little seed planted. Like it wasn't enough to have me break all the chains of addiction right there, but it was a seed planted in me. And from there on, content kept coming. And, eventually I got to a point where my life was completely unmanageable. My parents knew something was up, my family, my work. I almost got kicked out of school. It got to a very, very low point. I'm very grateful and fortunate that I have family that was watching over me, because they took care of me. They took me out of work and they put me into a, like a facility, like a 30-day facility. Everything was taken away from me, all my vices, my phone, all the drugs, all the smoking, nothing was there. And I just had this, it was just a time to reset and clear my mind.
A lot of people go to the facility, they get rid of the vices, physically get rid of them. But if you don't replace it with something good, they all come back. And this is actually a parable Jesus shares. Mm-hmm. You could clear the house and clean it all up and sort it out, but if you don't replace it with something good, good being the truth, you come back to that house, it's going to be a basket case again. One thing I wanted to mention is you pursued other worldviews, and I want to hear a little bit about that. Which ones were attractive, why they were attractive, and then kind of where they ultimately left you.
In addiction, I pursued just the aspect of you earn everything yourself. Like I remember I tried to pick up the book, The 48 Laws of Power, and I thought I needed to do everything to be successful. And is that almost an aspect of Stoicism's almost where nothing really matters, correct?
Stoicism's more that doing the good is the most important thing, doing the moral thing, doing a virtuous thing. Oh. The problem is, as my conversation with Ilya revealed, like who defines what's good. Mm-hmm. This is the story of totalitarianism. Hitler thought he was doing good. Right. Hitler obviously didn't think he was doing bad. He thought he took the Darwinian evolution model. He blamed people for ills and said, if I get rid of them, I'll make my society better. If I war my people, I'll increase their evolutionary track. I'll make them stronger. I'll make them the Ubermensch. He took that worldview to its ultimate conclusion. But if I think my way of life is the best way to live, and I run around and impose it by force, mm-hmm. I'm not doing bad inherently. I think I'm doing good. But this is how radically different Jesus' gospel is. Jesus' truth mm-hmm. is that he does it through love, not by force, mm-hmm. not by compulsion, by sacrifice. Mm-hmm. It's a radically different thing. But so like those two worldviews kind of leave you empty. Hedonism leaves you empty. I mean, you were pursuing somewhat of a life of hedonism, and I'm not saying in a judgmental way. You're trying to find peace mm-hmm. by self-gratification, whatever it looked like. And it doesn't work. It leaves you empty. Yeah. One thing I would say, like you were reading that power book, you said, 48 Rules of Power. You know, the world feeds you things. The God of this world feeds you things that sound real good. Mm-hmm. And again, everything I'm saying to you is coming from a guy that kind of had a similar approach to life until I came into stumbled into the truth. Doesn't sound bad to take control of your life. Someone says, take control of your life. It sounds good. But no, you're a mess. Mm-hmm. Let him take control of your life. And it's not this like lay down, and he's going to take care of everything. That's not the intent. The intent is, instead of relying on your pride and your ego, that I could do this, I could do that, look at me, look at him and humble yourself. Think of how complicated your body is and like that every breath is truly a miracle. If you watch a child being born, I don't care who you are. You could be the biggest atheist in the world. Something in you is telling you something happened or special. But we suppress that. We deny it. We lie to ourselves. But this whole power thing, how does that work in a fulfillment side? Were you fulfilled by trying to achieve power?
No, I was never fulfilled. And it's also just, that book was very, very selfish, and it taught selfish practices. It did not teach love. It taught how to, out deceive people. Yeah, it was a deceitful book, and I didn't really learn much from it because it just wasn't satisfying. And
thing that sounds good, love yourself. It sounds good. But in the end, it says in some of the prophecy of how the end times will be, is so they'll all be lovers of themselves. And what people don't realize is like one of the number one fake gods is themselves. Mm-hmm. They worship themselves. Right. And it's just empty. This emptiness that we all feel, someone who said there's a hole in everyone's soul that only he fits into. We all have this missing part, right? And we just fill it with a bunch of stuff. And it's not necessarily bad things. So like for me, I was just always trying to attain success, at least is how I defined it. And by the world standards, I was always hitting the mark. But what I found as I got older and older, get a good job, good place to live, have a wife, have a kid, build a house. Everything I kept doing, I was left emptier and emptier because I'm like, what else am I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. Where's the meaning from? This is what Jesus offers you. He offers meaning outside of yourself, in him. Whereas every other worldview, the meaning's derived by something you do. And there's this idea of this free gift. It's yours. Here's your meaning. Do you want it? Or do you want to keep wrestling with yourself, trying to find it, reading all these self-help books,
Yeah, that's a good point. Another route I went down was Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, which was there for me when I needed it. Coming out of a treatment program and jumping right back into the world. Alcoholics Anonymous was there for me. It was a support group on talking about what we went through and how the alcohol it affected our lives and how we don't need to drink one day at a time. And I really appreciated what it gave to me. And it's a 12-step program. The second step is we came to believe a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. So then they start getting into the spiritual aspect on how only a higher power can relieve our will to drink, because our will is to drink and have sex and do drugs and to be selfish, but God's will is different. And they started talking about a God, but the second step is a God of our own understanding. And at first it made sense to me, but then as I kept going to meetings, I started noticing that everyone had a different perception of God. People would have, oh, my God says I could do this, my God says I could do that, and something was just very uncomfortable about that. That's where the Bible says there's one God. It tells us who God is, and you can comment on this when you kind of just give people the opportunity to make up a God. They'll make up a God that conforms to their sins so they don't have to change.
One thing I appreciate about Luke so much, even being young, physically young, spiritually, he's very young too, but he's got such mature insights. A couple of things I want to point out to the listener. So, a lot of people that I've talked to when I'm trying to share the gospel with them, they make the argument like, well, you were at a low spot and you needed something to like bail you out. You just you grabbed onto this thing because you needed help at that particular point. Or you believe it because it makes you feel good. And anyone who knows me, my rebuttal to that is like, I wouldn't believe anything just because it makes me feel good. I believe it because it's true. Mm-hmm. And they're not mutually exclusive. It can be true and make me feel whole. People don't listen until they got themselves into a pickle. Right? You could warn someone like, hey, don't do that. It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. And they don't listen until they're in a jam. Your kids do that. There's friends that do that. So why is our relationship with God any different? Obviously, he would love that we don't do these things. Mm-hmm. But because of our pride, we need to be broken before we look up. People say that people get low and then they find God, as if that's disproving God or disproving the gospel as just something they're grabbing onto. My whole argument is, how other way would it work? It's very understandable that that's how it would happen. This whole thing, this God of our own understanding, and that you had the perception to know, that's like kind of ridiculous. This is like where AI is going, actually. Not to sidebar on AI, but we're instructed by the Bible that we're made in the image of God. And as we create AI, and many people forget, it's AI, artificial intelligence. It's not actually intelligent. It's mimicking intelligence from collecting data from all over the internet and then presenting itself as intelligent. I'd argue what we're actually doing is making God in our own image, a God of our own understanding, as the AA class put it. I know people that are atheistic in my life. They think I'm silly for trusting in the creator of the universe, but they have no problem trusting AI to tell them what to do. And they actually look forward to a day when the AI can tell them everything to do and decide for them what's good and what's bad and how they should make choices in their life. So they don't understand that, but they are pursuing to worship it. So I want to go to Paul's speech in Athens. And it's really insightful. It goes to Stoicism and Epicureanism because he's in Greece, he's at the university, and he's at the area where they would debate ideas. Not a bad idea to do. This is what I'm trying to encourage people to do now. Talk, work them out. And the Bible says that the Stoics were there and the Epicureans were there. So these worldviews have been around for a long time. And again, like you said, the Bible's not a mythological book. It's documenting historical events. So you have this guy, Paul, now presenting what he's come to realize is true. And they're kind of like, what's he talking about? They can't quite figure it out. But one thing Paul says is, he goes, I perceive by walking around your town that you're a very religious people. They had idols everywhere. They had temples. They had for the Zeus, for the god of war, god of this, god of that. And then they had a temple called the Temple to the Unknown God. And what he said is, I know that God. He's the creator of all. So when, like in the conversation with Ilya, where many times he'd go like, well, I just believe in one less God than you do. He's making a joke like, I haven't evolved enough to ditch this one God. But I'm not talking about gods like the God of this, the God of that, the God of my own understanding. I'm talking about the one that gave me the ability to understand anything, which if people would pause and think the fact that we're talking to each other, I'm making sound waves, they're bouncing against a drum in your ear. You're able to understand that, process it, and repeat. If you think that just came out of nothing, you're insane. And so Ilya would even acknowledge like, oh, well, yeah, Sal, you make some good points. Maybe there is some energy that made anything, but I know for sure it's not the God of the Bible. Which I would rebuke with, you say you're agnostic, but you're not agnostic about everything. You're certain it's not the God of the Bible. That's silly. But Paul's saying that, right? I'm not talking about the man-made gods. I'm talking about the God that we all know exists inherently when we go out the door and see birds and trees and plants and people.
for me, there's something about you have to seek first, and then God will reveal himself to you. And that's true for me. That's why I'm saying this, because like I said, there wasn't just one moment where everything made sense with Christ. I started kind of doing my research and reading the word a little. It was kind of hard to get into at first. But as I kept doing that, as I kept knocking on the door, God was revealing himself to me, and it's just like this relationship that you're forming with God, where as you seek, you'll be sought. Like, it didn't happen in one day. I think you need to actually seek, and then God will reveal himself to you. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I could tell you with certainty that's true, because the Bible says that. And the fact that you arrived at that conclusion without even knowing. I mean, the scriptures, I think it's Jeremiah that prophesies. I wish I had my phone with me because I would look them up, but if you'll find me when you seek me. And this is a challenge I give to a lot of people that say they're atheists, or I don't see God, I don't perceive God. I ask them, have you looked? And they pause. They don't say yeah confidently. The evidence for God is all around. Paul talks about it in the Romans. The truth about God existing is all around you. Look at the creation. Now, whether you suppress that or not, and as you seek, he will reveal more to you. This is obvious. Any other field of study, this would be the case. You want to sit down on the couch drinking a beer and God just planting in your head. He could, but it wouldn't mean anything. If you really were interested in what God had to say, you would seek him, right? The creator of the universe, it's available, is the point. And you're right about seeking him. But this is the idea of our faith, and faith isn't a blind faith, but it's a faith of seeking. It's a faith of wanting to know him better. And if you do that, he promises you, he will show you what you need to see.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people have a misunderstanding of who God is. They question, God doesn't love me, he's a hateful God, and all these things that turn them off to the idea of getting closer to God. And, I just found, like, as continued to, have studying on it, like, I've learned so much about who he is and his feeling, like he has feelings, and I just feel like God's very misunderstood in this world.
Well, that's the God of this world, intentionally trying to get you to misunderstand him. You know more about God from culture than you would from the Bible until you get to actually read the Bible. Mm-hmm. And what entity would be behind not getting you to read the Bible? Mm-hmm. I joke with people, like, most people's view of what a Christian is Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. You're rolling your eyes. Do you even know who Ned Flanders is?
I had to think about it for a second.
Yeah, so I'm a little older than Luke. Yeah. But like Ned Flanders, Oakley Dokley, just a goof, blindly believing whatever he's told. And yeah, you said it took a blind faith for you to open up the Bible. You were seeking. But as you have read and perceived and things have been revealed to you, that faith is not, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's not blind faith anymore. It's the faith that you have a confidence. It was blind, but now it's becoming something real. The only God that could exist, given what we know about science and our study of the universe, is the very God that's described. He has attributes that he must have in order for that God to work. Zeus doesn't fit the bill, but Yahweh does. Mainly that he's eternal, that he's personal, that he made a decision to put this into place. We know there was a beginning. Who was the beginner? And you could say, well, how do we know then it's Jesus? That's a whole nother conversation. We could have that.
My relationship to Christ started with, questioning God and seeking God, and almost the doors were opened up to understand who Christ was and what he did for us. I used not drinking, not doing drugs. I was addicted to tobacco and nicotine at a very young age. That was one of the hardest habits to break. But I offer that as a sacrifice to God, looking at, what he did to sacrifice for us. I believe that if we sacrifice and we give up, some of these worldly things, then God will open himself up to us. And I hope I'm not I'm kind of just making up my own ideas. I hope I'm not going against what the word says.
I would say that nothing you're doing is making that. He's there. I would say that you are removing self-imposed hurdles. He's not putting those hurdles in front of you. You are putting those hurdles in front of you. Mm-hmm. Keeping in mind always, and I think you have that right view. The devil would love to tell you, Luke, that what a great job. You good for you. Yeah. You read the right book, you did the right things, and you got rid of your habit. Wow. See, it's like the world wants to say that. It sounds great. That sounds super encouraging. But I'm condemning you to hell by saying that. Because I'm saying what God did, what God did in your life, I'm taking that away and saying you did it. And that's what the devil wants to do. Again, I've had that experience too with our marriage being restored. The way he ordained it, even myself and all my pride and belief that I could accomplish anything, I know for a fact he did it. And that's rock solid proof for me that God is real. He did something. You have that with this addiction that he took from you. The challenge is always keeping yourself free of the lie, which feels really good. It feels good to say, I accomplished this. There's people that make thousands of dollars giving speeches telling everyone what they accomplished, but it's a lie. They didn't do it. They knew at one point that they needed help, and they got that help, and then they deny it.
That's exactly what I wanted to make clear was, I'm saying that I gave up these things, but because I think I was seeking God, he lifted those addictions off from me. And it's easy for me to say that I did this and I stopped smoking and I stopped drinking. But it's just it's a relationship thing where I know that God is the one doing this for me. And I know that because as we deepen our relationship with each other, he reveals that he's the sovereign, most powerful entity in my life that can do all these things. And I definitely give all glory to God for how he's changed me. I just encourage people out there to start seeking and do some research into it. And I think that's the first step into faith is to start, you do your work. God's not just going to come and convict you on the couch.
I would say he's coming. He's always coming. It's, are we responding to him or not? And that's the imagery portrayed in the Bible. You have a paralytic by the pool of Siloam. We just talked about that. I might be pronouncing it wrong, I forget. But he goes to the paralytic, and I always found it curious. The paralytic's got this story about how he's been paralyzed for all these years, and he's trying to get into this water that he believes will heal him, and he can never get in there in time. And Jesus asks him a question. He goes, do you want to get well? And I think that's a question all of us have to ask ourselves, whether it's addiction. I mean, look, everyone's got something going on. They might deny themselves that or tell themselves they're doing great. You get on Facebook and just lie to the world that everything's spectacular. Do you want to get well? That's step one. How about the people that have never heard? Everyone who's living in the creation has enough evidence to know that there's a God. And anyone who's self-reflecting on that would have to ask themselves, why do they do things that they know are not good? And this opens the door for the salvation story. But to anyone asking that question, they've heard about Jesus. To me, it's just a scapegoat. Well, how about that guy in the middle of the Amazon? We could talk about that, but how about you? You've heard. What do you think? And it's suppression of the truth is what we're doing. We know we need help. We know we're doing stuff we don't want to do. So let me ask you that question. Being on the other side of it, can you recall times in your life where you were actively suppressing the truth?
My whole life, I think everyone has the moral law written on their hearts. Everyone knows right from wrong. And, my whole life, I would do things knowing what the right thing was to do and, not doing it. God is a righteous judge, and he is perfect. He is good. He's morally perfect. And because of God's goodness, he has to condemn sinners. None of us match up to the righteousness of God. There's a great analogy. I just compare God to a judge, and he is a judge because there is a day of judgment where Christ will judge the world. He will judge us by if we've kept his moral law. None of us have done that. And that's why we need a savior. We need Jesus stepped in and he paid our fine. So God is good because he judges the unrighteous, murderers, rapists, thieves. It would be unjust for God not to punish them. But we all deserve punishment. I mean, we all know right from wrong. God loved us so much that he, in our place, he gave his only son to take our punishment on the cross. I didn't understand that at first, and it's still something I'm coming, and I'm constantly learning more about it, and it's making more sense. It's just an amazing thing that God did for us.
I heard an analogy once, and some of these words we don't really even understand in our finite minds, in our corrupted minds. God is perfectly just, and he's perfectly merciful, right? We want the mercy, but we don't want the justice. If we're a human judge speaking, you commit a crime, you go into the courtroom. It would be merciful if you said, you know what, Luke, I like the cut of your jib, don't worry about it, get out of here. That'd be mercy, but it wouldn't be justice. If you came in and you stole a bike and he sent you to jail for 50 years, it'd be justice, but there'd be no mercy in that. So what does he do instead? Someone's got to pay. And we have the hints all throughout the Old Testament on how that was going to get paid, but he paid. Living a perfect life, his blood being worthy, right? It's not an animal sacrifice. his blood was worthy to cover your sin. And so when you present before the judge, you're not going to be okay because of all the good things you've done. He's going to see his son. He's going to see perfection that you've put on. You close it up for us.
I don't think there's much more to say to that. I heard once you're in the courtroom and the judge is sentencing you, but you go, "Oh, judge, like I just washed your car outside. Can you reduce my sentence?" Like we don't get saved for good works, but by faith in him. So.
Oh, you ended it beautifully. Luke, thanks for being so open and vulnerable. You're a walking testimony of the power of God. I hope you guys have enjoyed that conversation, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us for another episode. I hope I got you thinking and out of your comfort zone. Believe me, the biggest fear your government has is a population that is thinking and talking to one another. So get out there, take a risk, start a conversation, make a friend, and reason with each other. Share the show with someone who you think needs to hear it. I wish you peace and love.